From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me Michael Armstrong. Michael, he's a CTO, and I like to keep it for himself to introduce what he does and his company. So, Michael, thank you again for being on the show with me today. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Just looking forward to it. So my name is Michael Armstrong. I'm a Chief Technology Officer at Authenticx. We are, well, it depends on who you ask. Whether you ask me or our CEO, but we're in the customer experience space. So we really focus on customer and patient experience. And it's really the intelligence, it's the insights that we can glean from conversations, right? So our philosophy is really like your patients, your customers, they're telling you what your problems are. They're telling you what you can improve. They're telling you where the friction is. You just got to listen to them. You just got to listen to them. So that's really kind of the business focus that we take is really trying to understand this and helping clients solve these problems and understand this. Of course, we use a lot of AI because we do this at scale, right? Like massive scale. So of course, AI has to be a part of our strategy.
Great. And thank you again, Michael, for being here today. So the way I like to do it, and because we talk the same language, so from a CTO perspective, as a company and you as a someone who works on the technology side of it, I'm sure like you spotted some problems, right? And you mentioned, a couple of them, but what was really, the pain, that you tried to solve with Authenticx and CX, and what triggered also, like you said, right? Like this is something we need to fix because it's causing a lot of problems. So if you can share this with us and elaborate more on it.
Yeah, definitely. So what we saw, there's a couple things. First off is, healthcare. If you're familiar with healthcare in the U.S., it's expensive. The care is really, it's been evolving in a way that's really not really beneficial to patients. So the care is decreasing, the costs are increasing. There's a lot of different people in the mix, and it's just really complex. Like it's a really complex problem. And at the same time, we also observed a lot of companies, they're putting focus and energy into customer experience and patient experience, but they don't really have a great way to sort of understand the problem set. There's a lot of surveys, right? I'm sure you've seen a lot of surveys, things like NPS, right? Net Promoter Score is a big, very common thing we see all the time, right? And we looked at that, and there, of course, there's a lot of problems in surveys, right? There's self-selection and various biases. And then on top of that, like, there's not much rich context there. And what we saw from call centers and various recordings, every company has thousands of these conversations going on with their customers, with their patients every day, and they're recorded. Like everything's recorded, right? I'm sure you've heard hey, this is going to be recorded for quality assurance and that kind of thing.
Right.
And a large percentage of companies just it just goes off into the archives, so they don't actually do a whole lot with it, right? But it's an incredible resource. So our CEO was working, our CEO, Amy Brown, she was running a call center, she was a COO, running a call center of I think it was a health insurance company at the time. And she of course saw this firsthand, day in and day out, that you got a lot of problems, but your customers are telling you what they are. The customers are telling you what they need. They're telling you where they're stuck, where the problems exist. If you just listen, if we would just listen to that, it would be, you can make major changes. And so that's kind of where we started, was that insight of the problem, but the answer is there if you just listen to it. So that's kind of a little bit about the origin story there.
Yeah, great. Now, you mentioned at the beginning, and of course, because now this is became more logical, you said we use a lot of AI, and the reason is you have a lot of data sets. But first, let's understand a little bit about the domain-specific AI. So, like, what domain-specific AI is, and how it's different from general other AI models.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question, and just like AI in general, this is evolving. I'm sure you've observed that AI has evolved very rapidly, particularly this year. Um, I've heard the comment that, well, AI just started working 6 months ago, right? Like when ChatGPT 3 came on, it was like, now we have like AI that works. But domain specific AI really starts from the understanding that right now, as a company, right? If you're trying to build a company around AI, or AI is a big part of your moat, let's say, well, you have to realize that AI is it's a commodity, right? Like whatever the algorithms, the code that I have access to, everybody has access to in general, right? There's just so much really, really good open source that it's essentially it's just a commodity. And so we look at that and we say, well, if we're going to compete on that, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so there's really two different areas that we can focus on in the domain space. One is your training data, right? So if you have a unique set of data, that you can train these models on, well, that gives your models this unique ability, unique sort of insight into what you're analyzing. And so that's a really big, for us, that's a big part of our moat. And that's a big part of what the domain AI looks like, is you're training it on very specific problems. And so that's really where we focus in.
Yeah. Now, we talked about the call center part of it and the application in the call center, but is there and you talked about CX, which is basically in this case is the patient experience, right? So can you highlight some real world examples on how this could facilitate maybe the communication? Is it something that will make the diagnosis process easier? Like, what are exactly the use cases? I'm interested, it's very, and I was on the website actually on your website, and I saw like really some cool stuff over there, but I want to hear that directly from you, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. So we right now we focus in the three big verticals. So we focus in on pharma, payers and providers. And even within healthcare, we narrow this domain specific AI even more. So we might look at payers or providers and say, well, we need to build a model to sort of solve this problem. And so we even sort of stratify it at an even finer level, generally speaking. But I'll give you a really good example of how we utilize AI, and keep in mind that for us, the volume of data, like the scale of the data is huge. We process terabytes every week of data, so we're talking about hundreds of thousands of audio files, potentially chat files, things like that. So the scale is pretty big. But here's a really unique model that we've developed that's really useful and really interesting. If you're familiar with an eddy in a river, have you ever spent much time on rivers or anything like that? No.
Not really.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a slang term, I guess you could say, but when a river is flowing and there's a large boulder in the river or a large log in the river, and the flow of the water is disrupted, right? So instead of flowing downriver, that water begins to sort of swirl or pool, right? And it's no longer able to move downriver as it should. Well, that's called an eddy. And so we've developed this concept of an eddy effect, and really what it is it's about friction, right? It's about you ran into a problem. You're trying to get, let's say, a procedure approved or paid for, or you're trying to figure out, what's the process, for a billing payment or something like along those lines. And so, that's where this what we call an Eddy effect comes into play. So we have a model we've developed uh, for the past couple of years that'll tell us, hey, this conversation includes an Eddy, right? And so we can know like, hey, we've got friction. So we have clients that measure their Eddy effect rate across time, right? And so they're looking at this as well. In a way, they're looking at it as a replacement of NPS within this healthcare space. And that model itself is actually pretty interesting because it's actually pretty well generalized across all the verticals. So at this point, it understands how people talk about their problems, right? How they talk about, hey, I'm stuck here, I can't find an answer, those kind of things. And so that's sort of a really foundational model for us, some foundational AI, because we can determine like, hey, 20% of your interactions with patients have significant friction in them, for
Mm.
example, right? Just as our starting point. And then for us, we build on top of that. And again, we use AI in a really specific way where we're trying to solve really specific problems. And so we might then say, well, hey, within these 20% of calls or interactions we have Eddy, here are the things you're talking about, right? And so you can then narrow it down one step further and say, okay, what processes do we have that really generate a lot of friction and a lot of problems with patients and clients? So
Yeah,
that's really foundational for us as far as how we approach this problem. One more example for you
sure.
of like really specific model that we've built is what's known as safety events or adverse events, right? So in pharma, of course, indicating an adverse event's a pretty big deal, right? Where it needs to be captured and reported. And so we have a model that can identify that, hey, we've got a patient that's talking about an adverse event in this conversation. And then of
Mm.
course we actually have a follow-up model that indicates, did your customer representative, did they acknowledge that? Like, did they say, oh, okay, well, I better capture this information here. So, we're really tackling not just, vertical specific AI, but we're also like problem specific AI that we're really zeroing in on. And one of the reasons we do that is just like, AI fundamentally is probabilistic, right? Like it's always the best guess. And for us, that's not, that doesn't quite get it done in the healthcare space. Like you have to have the right answer. And so we take something that's sort of fundamentally probabilistic and we try to make it as deterministic as we can, right? Like it has to give us the right answer. Our because that's what our clients demand, of course, but also just the space we're in. We have to minimize, any of that wiggle room.
Yeah, and of course, like because you in healthcare, it's like something that touch people's lives, so it have to be deterministic, of course. Now you mentioned something about the data sets, and of course, like this is something we try even to explain it to enthusiast about AI. And to your point, like AI is not ChatGPT that came out at the end of last year. So it's all about the data and um, storing the data and cleaning the data. So what I'm interested to know from you, Michael, is um, like data set creation, right? So for you, I know like one part of it is the conversations that happens, during maybe calls, right? So now, how for healthcare specific AI models, this correlation is important, and how you can maintain and ensure that it it stays relevant and useful.
Yeah, that's a great question. And of course, I'm sure you've seen there's lots of interesting experiments done with ChatGPT where you get some, you can really sort of get weird answers out of it, right? Like very inconsistent and things like that. And so that's a hard problem. But we've made a pretty big investment in actually developing and generating our data set. And so for us, it's not just the conversation that's a part of the data set; it's also the labels, right? So we
Mm,
label. We actually have a team of healthcare professionals that we've hired. They're on staff, and what they do is they're really focused on in fact labeling various interactions for us. And so um, through this exercise, we've really generated this big set of data that we can train our models on. And it's not just labeling. So yeah, we hire people who know the space, they understand the context. But then we're very rigorous about calibrating. We have like very regular sessions where we're calibrating on what is an Eddy, what does an Eddy sound like, and we're looking at examples and we're adjusting and we're tweaking. And so for us, like, that labeled data set is like really critical and a part of what we consider to be like a really unique asset really for us.
Yeah. So what are the challenges in this process, Michael? I know think that comes top of mind is maybe privacy, right? Privacy of the data. So what other challenges you have when you do this?
Oh yeah, I mean privacy is a big deal. Privacy, data security, those are all really critical items. For us, it's we're let's say a younger company. We started in 2018, but that was also an advantage because just from day one, we built everything encrypted all the time. We use nothing but modern technology, and so I know we there's other let's say competitors in the space, especially in the NLP space, who maybe been around a little bit longer. It's a little bit a little more difficult problem for them, but we have some pretty strict rules about everything being encrypted. We have different teams actually that have been certified to listen to specific data. We've also put a lot of effort into actually redacting PHI, like personal health information, and so
Hmm.
that's actually a part of our process. So we have a pretty extensive like data processing process, and really one of the first steps is just to redact anything we don't need. So that's actually just built into our process is just um, you know just eliminating anything that might sort of cause a problem or has the potential to cause a problem. And that's not easy, especially when you're talking about a conversation, right? You're talking about very unstructured data. That in and of itself is a challenging problem. But we also put a lot of development work into the redaction as well.
Yeah. Now, one thing that, also I noticed, when I was exploring and preparing. So, of course, like, from industry perspective, you explained that. So it's like, pharma comes into the picture in addition to the hospitals and health providers. But from use case and role perspective, I've seen, in addition to patient experience, let's call it. So I've seen like marketing and operations. So how that works exactly?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So one of the things we look at the conversation as this like multi-purpose, really rich data set, right? And so out of a single conversation, the things that we can extract out of that begin with like the agent quality. So that's just like the baseline. We can assess how well did the agent do.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where a lot of companies are today as far as the maturity. Their maturity is they want to assess how well did our agent do. But there's a lot more there than just the quality, right? There's the customers. There's a lot to be gleaned about your brand, for example. Like how do they think about your brand? How do they feel about your brand? So that's something that marketers are very interested in. If we're hearing brand detractors or something along those lines, if you're a marketer, you want to hear that straight from your customer. You don't have to go do a survey if your customers are already telling you. And of course, we can extract that information as well. And then from an operational standpoint, we hear about process problems.
Hmm.
In fact, process problems are uh, the majority. Like I'm trying. So we just did a study actually. We had our first conference a couple weeks ago called Voices. And so we presented a study at that conference, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was a pretty big majority of the problems of the eddies that are indicated are related to process problems, right? So if you're in operations, you can hear straight from the customer the process problems that exist and that they're really running into, causing a lot of friction.
Yeah. So Michael, few moments ago you mentioned about when you do the training, you use labeling, which is done by people who are experts, so they can put and and like labeling for people who are not familiar, it's kind of classification, if you want, or you put a tag like this is this is that, this is this. So, but what else? I'm AI trainings. When I hear training, so this is the ultimate goal sometimes. uh, is to enhance the overall results, right? So does it go into a way where you want it to be kind of and excuse me because I'm not like an AI fully expert in this, but I know like there's a way where you go with the supervised learning model and then there's the unsupervised learning model. So is this something that you do so the algorithm or the AI can by itself goes and learn new things, or you need to keep feeding it with data and rely on the labeling for getting it better?
Yeah, well, so I think the answer to that is yes. Uh, well, at least from our standpoint, we look at every problem and say, hey, what's the best way to approach this? So we actually use um, uh, supervised models, like you suggested, where you have a label, right? So you have an input, you have that sort of output label that allows the machine to learn from. Right. So you can, and sometimes what we'll do is we might clip a little part of a conversation, let's say a 10-second clip, and we say, hey, in fact, this is one of the things we're working on right now. This is frustration. This is what frustration sounds like. This is the words, this is the tone, those kind of things. And so that would be a supervised approach, a supervised model. We also have algorithms that are unsupervised, where we're doing things like various cluster analysis, looking for different topics that might exist, might show up, right? Like we're looking for those latent patterns, but we're letting the machine find it, right? Like so that would be an unsupervised type of approach. And of course, we've actually had we released our first language model 2 years ago. So our first language model was actually summarizing calls, and that's a self-supervised model, right? So you develop a language model by, well, self-supervised, but really what it's doing, it sort of drops out a word, it predicts it, it says, hey, did I get it right? And so that's the self-supervised approach, and even we take we use all three of those approaches, but then we're always retraining, whether it's like a reinforcement learning type of approach, as we develop additional data. The more the model can see and understand what the label is when it sees or hears this specific situation, right? The smarter it gets, the better it gets, the more generalized it gets, right? And so that's a process that we work on just really regularly. Like our Eddy effect model, I think we just released version 3 of that. And so for us, it's a continuous improvement sort of process. It's not automated yet. We've considered that, but as you've seen with ChatGPT, it's a double-edged sword if you automate human feedback into the loop. So, right as of right now, it's my ML engineers go and they do a little bit of analysis on the feedback data before we just say, hey, this is the right answer. Go ahead and learn from it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So Michael, I tried to follow a sequence to reach to this question. Now, as CTOs, and even as consultants, because I was a consultant myself. So when we talk about a new technology, or when we try actually to solve a problem with a technology that we develop or we acquire or whatever, so we talk about metrics, right? So we talk about how the business is gonna be getting benefits. So, from your point of view, when your customers or any customer, I mean, in this space, adopt this technology, like what are, I would say, in the short term result that they start to see, and on the long run, what are also the benefits they see deploying, this technology?
oh yeah, that's a good question. So usually our clients, so there's this maturity curve. Because
Right.
again, this is not a space that's real common. A lot of enterprise uh, companies have, they have talent and they have experience with structured data, and maybe they have data warehouses, they have BI systems. And we're generating a lot of intelligence, kind of similar to BI, but it's from this unstructured data. It's from these conversations, and so it's very new usually to our clients. A lot of them start with just, hey, I want to assess the quality of my agents, right? I want to score the agents. I want to coach them. Like that's a big part of it is the action that comes out of the intelligence that comes out of the AI and the structured data we're generating. And so one of the very first use cases you see is that an improvement in the quality scores. So a lot of times agents are assessed on several different skill sets, and just first of all, just by measuring the skill set, you start to see some improvement, right? And then one of the things we built in, and this is actually part of our philosophy, is if we're going to build AI, we're going to build intelligence. We don't want to do it just because it's neat, even though that's fun for some of us nerds, like we just like technology, but it has to be something we can act on. And so one of those things we built in is this agent coaching capability. And so what you see is you begin to see those quality scores really improve as your agents are being measured and they're being coached, and they're seeing specific examples of, hey, this would be a better way to handle that, or this is the answer, or you can maybe find gaps in your training and things like that. And that's usually what you really see really early on after you've implemented our software and begun to sort of utilize the program.
Mhm.
And then as you grow in your sophistication, you start tracking things like Eddy effect. You start tracking it like you might track an NPS score, and you want to follow that trend, and begin to understand, okay, well, where are my process problems? And you begin to work on your process problems too.
Mhm.
And you can track your Eddy score, your Eddy effect score, and as really like, hey, let me see what the trend is, and let's see how this is changing. We've had clients actually too, where maybe they've had, you know, um, a new product launch, and they want to know, like, what are people talking about? Like, they just want to know what they're talking about. What are the topics? What's coming up? And so we
Mhm.
see a lot of that coming up too. And to the point where we've had clients, taking, printing reports out of our system, taking it to the CEO once a week, taking it to board meetings, just because they want to know, like what are your clients? What are they talking about? What are your patients talking about? What are the problems? And so it can be really powerful from that standpoint. And actually, Mehmet, I don't know if you saw on our website, we have something that's kind of unique. We call this the montage builder. Did you see that at all?
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. Yeah. So I know this is about AI, but this is a really interesting thing because if you've been in the data space, you've probably been in a situation where you see something that's like you did an analysis and you see this data that's really compelling, right? And you want to share it with somebody else because you want to act on it, right? Like you want to say, hey, here's a problem, let's go improve it. But
Yeah,
you can't get any traction, right? So I don't know if you've ever experienced that or, you know, seen something like that.
it's amazing actually. When by the way, I have to say something like you designed actually the website in a way that it's hooking. Like, although like I'm not I don't work in healthcare. I
Yeah.
work with them a lot, but I mean like it's something that really touches people's life and actually the experience itself, and it's all what about you do. So the experience, because the frustration when you try even to book maybe an appointment with the doctor, and when they let you wait on the line, or maybe you are checking, you did some tests and you want to see the results, and because
Mhm.
it's something we do from time to time at all of us. And when you
Mhm.
see this, how you can enhance the whole process, it's really fascinating. Now, you mentioned a couple of things regarding the existing infrastructure, right, and the existing systems. So, unstructured data. Oh my God, like one of my, my favorite topics, like unstructured data. We'll not discuss the technical details, but I mean, like, how easy, or do you see it as a challenge to integrate your solution, or maybe any AI solution, with existing infrastructure and existing other software? Because you mentioned data lakes, you mentioned maybe they are using some data analysis tools. So, how easy is this, I would say, exercise to integrate something similar to your solution, or AI in general,
Yeah. Yeah.
from existing setups?
No, that's a great question. And well, so let's just start with just the AI in general. I think we've been using this term lately. I don't know if this is offensive, but it just kind of describes some of the conversations. And we've kind of referred to a lot of, a lot of people looking to buy software as kind of AI drunk, right? Like they're just like, AI, I gotta have AI, right? Like, and the question, of course, is like, well, okay, well, what are you going to do with it? What's the problem you're trying to address, or how's it going to help you? And that's what we try to really focus on that. And I think right now it's really challenging, right? Because it's like you gotta work your way through the hype, and you gotta figure out, okay, where does it fit? This isn't a silver bullet, it's not like a magic wand kind of situation. It's powerful, but where does it fit? How can you use it? And so just from that point, we do a lot of education. I'm sure there's other AI companies running into the same thing, because there's just so much hype around it. So that's a challenge. And then for us, the additional challenge on top of that is just the unstructured data. We've got to get a hold of call recordings out of systems where they're like, they've been maybe storing it for decades, but nobody really has the knowledge of where it even exists, right? And so we have a pretty significant professional services where we help clients figure it out. We help them figure out, like, where is this data? How do I integrate it? But then also, of course, how do I climb that learning curve of, I've made this big investment. How do I get the benefit out of it? But yeah, it is. I mean, the truth is, it's pretty challenging to figure it out. Everybody wants it. They're not sure what it is.
Exactly. By the way, like I had like another AI company, they were facing the same challenge when they talk to the customer and they say, okay, like we have this AI, and the customer's first question, okay, where is your chat GPT interface? Because now, everyone thinks, like, when we talk about AI, okay, where is the chat interface? And it's not about the chat interface. But I think customers slowly, I mean, especially enterprise customers, they start to get, like, it's not only about the chat. Yeah, it's good. It's a good functionality to be able to extract data from the large language model. But I mean, it's not like the whole thing. This is like just the interface. This is the top of the iceberg, I would say. And there's a lot of work that happens, underneath that needs to be taken care of. And yeah, good luck with extracting the data from the unstructured data platforms over there. Like, it's something really, it's a hard exercise, but it's not impossible, I would say. So now you are in this space, Michael, and what 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 are the, I would say, it's maybe like a traditional question, but what are the trends you are seeing in that space, in the healthcare and AI machine learning space? Like, what other use cases you're seeing happening?
Yeah, well, so a couple other use cases, and these actually would be really good use cases for large language models, is just be able to answer questions. And I think this is still really, not very mature at all, but so many patients and customers, like, they just have a question they need an answer to. And oftentimes that question it's a simple question, but the answer is kind of complex, or it requires a pretty detailed set uh, uh, of knowledge around your policies, your protocols, and not even necessarily like health knowledge, or it's just like, what are the rules, and so I think that's an area that I would see, like, just ancillary to my space that I'm focused on, that would be just right for AI to really be beneficial. We are hearing a lot of talk from clients that they think AI can replace their call centers. They can replace all their agents, replace all their call centers. I'm not. I wouldn't be in that camp. I think people still want to talk to people. Especially in healthcare, especially when you're talking about your health. You're talking about, well, in a lot of cases, you're even talking about life or death. You want to talk to
Right.
another human being. And so I don't think that's the situation we're in, but there's a lot of talk about it, of just replacing humans, and how can you replace people? That's not really where we come down. We really come down on how can we augment it? How can we make the experience better? How can we augment humans? How can we help them do their job better? But there's a lot of talk of replacing people right now. So.
Yeah, but I have, we discussed also this on the show, and especially in the healthcare, like I asked the question, are we going to see even, AI replacing physicians? No, of course not. But, it will empower, whoever is using this technology. And I'm fan of, being AI powered, I would say. So I'm just thinking now of a use case. So if someone is calling and, there are these results that are written by an MD, and
Mhm.
describing, what the results are. And usually they are very scientific. So maybe using the AI, the agent can use the AI to translate this into, as we say, the layman terms to the patient, like, hey, that means blah blah blah, in a very more
Yeah.
simple way. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's a use case.
Yeah.
I see it. Yeah, and replacing, yeah, but unfortunately, like some of the jobs will be replaced. Like there's no escape from that. But uh, it's about elevating, the skills and getting, to the next level. Now, as we are coming almost to the end, Michael, like I want to ask you something regarding being a CTO in this space, like how it's different from being a CTO in any other space, and what advice you give for someone, he or she might be interested in going this direction that you went. Like any hints or tips you would give.
Yeah. That's well. So for some reason, we decided to find one of the hardest spaces to tackle. So we're not just in healthcare; we're also tackling we sell into the biggest enterprises in healthcare. I
Yeah.
was actually just at a summit last week with other founders, and I think almost everyone said, "Well, we're avoiding enterprise. We're in small business or in the medium company space, and we've got well, that's not us. We're like, what's the hardest possible thing we could go after? I think we might have found it. Um, and one of the things that's really been beneficial for us is to go in with and be very security minded. So we put a lot of effort into data security and privacy. And as we're working through the security questions and the security assessments from each one of our clients, we often get the feedback like, hey, that was the easiest assessment we've done, and it's because we put a lot of effort and thought into it. I've got my security guy Ken Gouch is he's all over this. He just loves this stuff. He's just awesome at it, and so but that's really been a bit of an advantage. And so I think if you really want to get into this space, it's not necessarily the fun part of it. I know for me, like I'm all about like I want to talk to my email engineers. I want to talk to my app engineers. That's the fun stuff. But um, get your data security right. Just from the beginning, just make it so that it's not an issue, and that'll definitely smooth the way. Um, it may not be the fun stuff, but make it happen and you'll get in better shape.
Yeah, cool. Like I know, I think it's a very valid advice of it. And if you're passionate about it, go for it. Whether it's this space or any other space. It's what I tell even entrepreneurs and founders that they come to me sometimes. So, Michael, is there anything that I should have discussed, asked, and I missed?
There's only one other thing I wanted to add is just, we've talked a lot
Sure.
about AI and we've talked a lot about data. One of the things we're actually really careful about, especially in customer experience space, is, we're generating data, we're generating, output from AI, but we always sort of lead our customers back to the literal voice of the customer. We want them to hear the patient. We want them to hear what the patient or the customer has to say. We want them to hear that, that might be frustration or pain in their voice. So even though our AI is telling you X, there's just no replacement for actually hearing it for yourself. And so at the end of the day, for us, it's all about we want to be really careful about not dehumanizing by using AI, right? Because we want to make sure we're still focused on the human beings that are involved in this process. And so I guess that's something I want to share, but also just I would encourage others who really want to get into this, especially from a healthcare perspective, is just don't lose sight of that sort of human aspect of it.
Yeah, 100%, Michael. And thank you for bringing this in. And because we discussed, when we talked, I had some episodes just dedicated for customer experience and also which mix sometimes with the digital transformation
Mhm.
thing. And we said like you should not usually rush to implement any technology, whether it's AI or any other technology, because especially in call centers, we heard like horror stories about when they put bots, and customers were frustrated because they were not able to talk to a human, and they were all what they were getting is, okay, if you have this, press one, if you have this, press two, press three, and it's like it's a lock. There's no escape from that, and they had to get frustrated. And yeah, it's a very valid advice, and thank you for bringing this, Michael. So Michael, where we can find more about you and about your company?
Yeah, you can check us out on at authenticx.com. We've got a lot of stuff out there, a lot of case studies. It's pretty interesting. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, uh, so you can find me there. Um, I don't tweet a lot. Amy Brown, our CEO, tells me that I'm too provocative, so I try to be a little bit careful about that. So.
Yeah, okay, that's completely fine. Cool. I will make sure that all the links, the company website is in the show notes, of course. And if someone want to connect with you, and if anyone has even question to Michael, you can send to me. I will pass it to Michael. Michael, very much for the time and for being on the show. It was really informative. We saw today a different, I would say, or let's say, we looked at a different angle from the customer experience / AI, which is mainly for the domain that you serve, which is healthcare, insurance
Mhm.
companies, and so on, and even like use cases, which are, guys, I advise you to go and check, because this is something I didn't maybe discuss it before enough, about the patient experience, which is very important, and it touches all of us. So cool stuff. Um, Again, thank you, Michael, for being here today, and for the audience, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for sending your feedbacks, your questions. I really appreciate that. If you're interested also to be a guest on the show, don't hesitate. Reach out to me. We can arrange for that as well. If you have a cool idea, you have a cool thing you want to discuss. And yeah, thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.